Today we're going to talk about our final Revit exercise for the semester. This exercise is based on Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. So who is Calvino? He's an Italian writer. He was born in 1923, and he gave a lecture at Columbia that describes how he formed the writing of the book Invisible Cities. What we're going to do in this exercise is read 4 passages, sketch our idea of what the passage means, and then transfer that into Revit. So let's learn a little bit about the book. So the book is about a discussion between a traveler, Marco Polo, who visits the world and then returns to report to a gentleman named Kubla Khan. Marco Polo is a Venice merchant who has gone out and seen the world. So I'll let you read Italo Calvino's description here. So why do we want to go to cities, and why do we want to be architects? Many people see Calvino in this book as describing different parts of Venice. If you've ever had the opportunity or have the opportunity in the future to go, maybe there's something there that inspires you in his writing to find that type of a place in Venice or in a city that you know or have dreamed of. So let's look at the exercise that I've given you in a PDF, which are 4 excerpts from the book. You can find, or I can provide if you're interested, an entire PDF of this book. But what I've done, I've given you the introduction so that you understand how the book is laid out. There are many sections in this book that in between the chapters where Kubla Khan and Marco Polo have a conversation. And then as we get into the descriptions of the different cities, this is what Marco Polo is describing to Khan. So you're going to read about 4 different cities: Despina, Isura, Zenobia, and Armilla. You can read through all of those, and then why don't you take a minute to decide, or some time to decide, which one means something to you. And then at the end of this Invisible Cities project, I have a description of what Italo Calvino gave in his lecture to Columbia in 1983, which helps to place the book in context as we begin this project. After you've read about the 4 cities, choose one. Part of this project is going to be drawing in your sketchbook. I suggest not going online to search, which is how I found some of these sketches, but create something of your own. And this could take some time, an hour, 2 hours. Maybe you need to think about it before you begin drawing. Because the next step, you need the drawing to do. You need to choose a scale. So reflect on what you drew. And can you imagine in your mind how large it is? What I'm going to do to help you determine that is to look at what a 1 acre in Venice looks like, a 1 acre in New York. That's a small scale. Then we're going to look at a larger scale, an 18-acre plot size in both. in order to start comparing Venice and New York sizes and scales, whether that be an acre or 18 acres, I'm going to ask that you download Google Earth to do the following exercise. In our PDF, along with the lecture, I'm going to try to give you a little bit more direction so that you can follow along step by step. So what you're about to see is going to googleearth.com live, downloading the program and launching, typing in the search bar the Peggy Guggenheim in Venice and Hudson Yards. So that's when you use the search key in the second image with the circle around it. And then we're going to measure scale and size using the ruler tool to measure distance and area. I have typed in Google Earth into the search bar, and then I'm going to click on the link. If you have never used Google Earth, you're going to have to download it before you can launch it. So what I've done to find an acre in Venice is to have typed in the Peggy Guggenheim Museum in Venice. Once we locate the Peggy Guggenheim, take a look at the corner options. We have a north arrow and a 3D option. Most likely, you will come in at a 3D. You can explore by zooming in with your cursor or out, and then holding down the shift to find different directions of 3D or 2D. So you can explore Venice for a minute, and then let's join each other over top of the Peggy Guggenheim Island. I'm going to click 2D, click the north arrow to arrange myself, and then begin the measurements. This brings me to a southern island, if Venice is in northern Italy. A southern island in Venice, and I'm going to describe it as this almost square shape that narrows at the north. I understand there's another canal running through the middle of it, but we can easily see and depict the two canals on either side. So in order to measure items on Earth, Google Earth has a tool that looks like a ruler, measure distance and area. I'm going to go to the left and click on the ruler, and then I'm going to look for that 208-foot square to understand the size of this island. I'm going to select, click a point here, and drag my cursor straight, and it doesn't even reach a quarter of the island. I'm going to hover around 208 and make a mark. So this is how I created the small square that represents an acre. Google Earth adds the dimensions, so we're looking for 416 here to finish out that square. So we're brought to an area over Hudson Yards, which has been published in Arc Daily quite often in the last few years. You might recognize the picture of the vessel or have heard of the High Line. So let's select an acre in New York after having looked at the city from all different vanishing points and then reorganizing and reorienting ourselves northward and 2D. I am going to arrange the city block so that it is parallel, making my acre measurement a little easier to manage. So here we have Hudson Yards. There's the shed project below the vessel. So I'm going to select one of the areas north of that. Grab the measuring tool. I'm looking for a distance for an acre of a 208. And when I start this on the edge. $416, and so on. And then I can move and adjust, trying to get down to the 43 mark. Good enough. Spend some time to compare those two areas. They're both 1 acre, but the densities of both cities are about, well, they're very dense compared to a rural area, but the scale of the density is different. New York is a very high-rise centric. Manhattan is a high-rise centric area, whereas Venice is really no more than maybe a 5-story building. Let's then compare a larger area. Depending on your sketch, maybe you can't envision your invisible city in an acre and you need 18. Try to pick something that we could recognize as an island size in Venice or a 3-block size in New York, so that you can use Google Earth to zoom around and discover what scale your city needs to be. So let's develop the 18-acre site in both of those cities so that you can visualize that. In order to find an 18-acre site, I'm looking for a dimension just under 900 feet, around 885. So again, we're going to hover over the ruler and work with a straight line, clicking once, and almost to the end of the island. So here I'm looking for 16 to 1700 foot. We'll reach the end. And then I'll go back to square off. And notice when I hover on that final corner, it gives me a perimeter. It seems like I'm a little under. So I can move the corner points in order to adjust. So let's find our 18 acres here. To look for an 18-acre site, I'm going to select the measuring tool, point my cursor on the edge of the city block, go over one street, connect to try and find an area close to 740,000. And that's our 18-acre site in New York. After you do all of these sites, you might want to zoom around and get a better understanding of perspective with the 3-dimensional buildings and what that area feels like. So now that you've completed the exercises of evaluating what a 1 acre feels like versus an 18 acre, you can decide what size lot you want to build your city on. You don't have to, though. So it's a time to choose a scale. We can look at Venice, or we can look at New York. Or you can begin building. So the first thing that I will do in Revit would be to create 1 acre and 18 acre plots using filled regions to tell me the size. What you'll see in Revit is that I create two sizes. I do that in the massing and site area tab of Revit, and then going to topo surface. If you want to see the site as you build it, you can go to the site view. I build mine in level 1. And then what I continue to do in Revit is to develop my city. So yours is going to look different, but I'm going to give you some tools that we haven't used previously that you might want to use while building yours. So don't build my city, build yours. You can follow along the PDF. I'm in a level 1 plan in Revit, and I've just used simple filled regions, to create a 1-acre site, understand what 3 New York City blocks look like in Revit as far as scale, and then created an 18-acre filled region. I have that as a keyboard shortcut command. I type in FR, and I can create any shape to specific dimensions and then obtain an area. So if I zoom in, I'm going to delete that. If I zoom in to the 1-acre site, I see that I have 2 dimensions that make the square of 208 feet, 8.5 inches. That creates an acre. And then for the 18-acre, square dimensions of 885 feet, 6 inches. I'm going to use this as a base to create a site. You must create a site that has a 0-point edge. And from there, your site may be mountainous or oceanic. But let's create the outline first, and then you're able to manipulate the landscape however you like to fit your imaginary city. So I'm going to hit Massing and Site tab, go to Topo Surface, and I'm going to place the point of 0. What it's saying is that I need to be in a site plan in order to see my site. So we'll check that after we use our guides. So my elevation is at 0. I'm going to place 4 points around the acre and hit the check mark. I'm going to do this one more time for the 18-acre site. Hit check. Now let's go to 3D to see what the sites look like in 3D. To begin building my city, I'm going to start with a 1-acre site because I don't know yet how large I really want it. I'm going to start drawing and then decide. For mine, I have a series of columns. I've drawn one organic column row, and then I shifted it 4 feet, 8 feet away, and using copy, what I did after creating the first 3 rows was to copy using the base point of 1 column to get the rest. So again, don't overdraw or repeat. That's what the Revit tool is for. So I can simply repeat that way. I'm then going to experiment with heights. I had a 50-foot level, which I created not knowing how high I wanted certain elements. And then I decided I needed others that were 100 feet. You can do this in elevation or in 3D if you go to a perfect elevation. I copied a level so that it would be 100 feet. And then I selected half of the columns and placed those at the level 7 height. I don't think I like this uniformity, so I think I'm going to pull down some surrounding edges so that only the center portion is high. If I want to make floors in abnormal shapes, I rely a lot on the slice tool. So let's say I want to do a floor that weaves in and out. I've based my overall large shape on an ellipse, and then I have done 3 arcs. In order to trim the arcs, I'm slicing twice, deleting the slice, TR for trim, and I'm touching the elements that I would like to remain. Like such. Remember that if you want a hole in the floor, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can double click the floor and create an object that does not overlap your original boundary and hit the check mark. Or you can do a shaft opening. I have a keyboard shortcut command, SO. What this does is if you have elevators or stairs through multiple floors, this creates an invisible boundary that you can click on in 3D, but that goes away if you are in floor plan or in 3D and not selecting it. See how that goes through both this plane as well as this one. Let's say I want to see the whole picture, or I've gotten lost in a section of my drawing. I can zoom extent, just Z spacebar. And that brings me back to the whole picture again so that I can reorient myself. If you want horizontal banding, to do that on a wall, we're going to click the arrow below the Wall tab and go to Wall Sweep. You can click this wall and click the next wall if you would like it to be continuous, and then click off. Same thing with a reveal. Click the wall you'd like to have the reveal, and then off. And now you see an element with components that project and recess in the wall. If you want to introduce color to your plan, one way of doing that is by color coding different areas. To start that, we need to give our floors or rooms names. Let's say we don't have an enclosed boundary, and when I try to tag a room, there's nothing to grab. I need to first create room separator. I've switched my view to go to level 7, and then I want to see other plans below, so I've underlaid all the way to level 1. So I'm going to hit the room separator tag, and I'm going to trace over my objects. If the objects are not perfect rectangles, you can use the pick line tool, which is the green arrow, and this will simply grab any object that you have previously drawn. Now with enclosed areas, I can name them as rooms. I'm going to click the room tag or type in RM, room button, and create rooms in the spaces that I separated. I'm going to continue and separate all the other volumes so that we can move on together. I have named my rooms as specific functions. Again, I believe the main purpose of a dwelling is to eat, sleep, and clean. So I've created my organic shapes as eating spaces, maybe gardens, the linear bars as cleaning, and the small rectangles as sleep. You don't need to do that, but if you're color coding, it means that you're trying to organize your plan in a certain way. So you need to determine how you want to group your different spaces, or maybe they're all different. In order to color code, what you need to do is you need to hover over the floor, or the room rather, and tab until you get the X box. That represents selecting the room space. Not the floor, not the walls, but just the area of the room that you've named. In the department tag of the properties bar, I'm going to type in your organizing element. For me, it is clean. And hit apply. You're going to do this for all the spaces that represent that bar. So I'm going to do that and then pick up.